Hello, thank you for joining me today. Welcome to the Tell It Like It Is podcast. I have, as always, an amazing guest. I have Chrystal joining me today. Hello, Chrystal, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Alexi?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for joining me today. Me and Crystal, we met. It's a very beautiful story, and like so much of like my running background has been like this, so it just felt very organic. So I was volunteering at bib distribution for the marathon, and this bubbly personality just walked in to pick up her bib. And
Yes. Yeah. I met
yeah,
you during my ninth marathon for the New York City Marathon.
yeah, and we have a friend in common.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So this was your ninth marathon, you said? This was
Yes.
2019.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right at the end of 2019. Unfortunately, my 10th marathon got canceled. It was a victim of all the running related COVID cancellation. So I gotta find what lucky number 10 is gonna be.
I'm right around at that 9-10 mark as well with my marathons. I started running back long ago, but my first marathon was 2013. When was your first?
My first marathon was in 2012, so not too far before you.
Right. So 2012, I was doing 9+1 in New York. And if you know the story, that was the year Hurricane Sandy came through and
Mm-hmm.
that marathon got canceled. So, that would have been a nightmare for me being the first. What did you do for your first?
So coincidentally, I did Marine Corps marathon in 2012, and it was the day that Sandy hit. So every so actually the weather ended up being perfect in DC because I mean it was getting ready for that storm, but there were some concerns whether what time it was going to hit, if I was going to impact things. And my best friend lives in Queens, so she had come down to cheer me on in the marathon, and then we were gonna go up there. I was gonna spend the week in New York because the home office of my company is up there, and so finished the marathon. It was my first one, so everything hurt. Thought it was fine, but then like it kicks in a little bit later, where just everything stiffens up. And she was like, "We got to go right now before the bridges close." So we like sped up leaving because she wanted to be in New York before you couldn't get back into it. And this ended up being stranded in New York with all the New Yorkers because this huge hurricane hit. So, yeah.
I mean, I think Hurricane Sandy was like one of these one in a million stories, right? And
Mm-hmm.
no one could have predicted it. And because it's New York, we've never really had a hurricane come up that far before. So everyone was like, hurricane. And it blindsided everything. And throwing marathons in the mix, it was just like once in a lifetime, you know? So those two marathons, the pandemic cancellation and the Hurricane Sandy cancellation, are gonna go down in history, and we have stories tied into both of those. How was your experience running New York?
I loved it. It was so much fun. I mean, everything about it was memorable from the time spent on Staten Island, just kind of like the nerves building up because I'd never just kind of been at the start that long, and it's like you got to prepare for it because you get there really early, you're kind of camping out, and then there's just so much energy throughout the entire race as you run through each of the boroughs. And then even getting to the end and having my sister actually came to cheer me on at the race, and she was in the grandstand cheering me on at the very end. And I saw so many people I knew because it's New York City. Some that I was expecting. Others would just come out because I mean the marathon just kind of shuts the city down. So it was like a big running reunion, and so much fun. Like it just had such a great time throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, the New York City Marathon for me, you just summarized it. A giant party, people everywhere. You see people running, people you don't know, people reconnected you haven't seen in a while, and the streets are shut down. Like there are people who don't even know what's happening, who just get kind of swept up, and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" And you, yeah, is Atlanta the same way?
So at no. The Atlanta Marathon is not does not have quite have the same energy as uh as New York, but it's a fun, challenging marathon. Atlanta's kind of hilly, so it does have a reputation built around that, but it's still growing. I mean, in 2020, we hosted the Olympic trials, so
Yeah.
that was incredible to see, and that was one of the most fun marathon experiences that I've ever been a part of. Made better by the fact that I was not running it, but we've got a great running community, so we've adopted the nickname Running City USA, but a very different energy than in New York City.
I mean, New York City, right? You can't compare it to that. Is
Yeah.
it around the city? Is it around the outskirts? What are the stops like? Does it hit all the key parts of Atlanta?
Yeah, so the route has changed in the last couple of years. So now it does spend much more time within the city of Atlanta and seeing different parts of the city, going by the major sporting arenas like the Mercedes Benz Stadium and past Phillips Arena. And it begins and ends right near Centennial Olympic Park, the home of the '96 Olympics game. So yeah, you see a lot of great Atlanta landmarks, and at one point you even run up underneath the rings from
Oh,
the near the stadium where they had the track and field
okay.
event. So it's a lot of fun.
A lot of things. I feel like you've like you embody a lot of what I think running is, you know, why I fell in love with running. Like it's not just running, right? Since the pandemic, I've ran around my neighborhood like nonstop, and it's like it's not the same, right?
Hmm.
Running races is not just about running. Like that's like a small part of it for me. Like what is it about running races that really gets you excited?
That's a really good question. The funny thing is, anytime, you know, when I think about like, do I love to run? I don't know, but I do love what running has brought into my life. I love the friendships that it has, you know, it has blessed me with. I appreciate, you know, how much more connected I feel to my community. I've learned a lot about myself along the way. So there's so many benefits to the process in general, that you just get so much out of it. So that's what, as part of what I love about running. It's a full experience. It does feel like a complete journey where you're learning about yourself, you're setting goals, and then there's always a celebration in there somewhere, whether it's in the training process or doing the actual event or just realizing like, wow, I stretched myself a little bit further than I thought I could, and I survived, and I'm here to celebrate and be excited about that, and I earned, you know, that glass at the end, whether that's like beer or Gatorade
Whatever
or
it is,
something
right?
else, or just a chocolate milk, which is always good.
Um, so many races, so many places. What do you look for in a race when you're looking?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of my current goals is to run a race in all 50 states, and I've tied that to also trying to learn something about that area when I'm there. So whether it's going to a museum or a landmark or just trying to experience something about the culture. So as someone who views himself as a lifelong learner, there's
Mm,
that. Um, within Atlanta, um, I do lots of races that somehow are meaningful to me. So I am a member of our local track club, the Atlanta Track Club, which is the second largest running club in the USA, and that has um, again one of those things that has brought me challenges. It's actually how I ended up getting into pacing for races, and has helped me learn much more about being a runner. So I'm an active member there and regularly volunteer. And then um, also one of my favorite races in Atlanta is actually called The Race, which has a mission of not just, running through the community, but also giving back to the community and has a volunteer and activism component to it. So a piece of every registration is invested back in the community. And then the race is always on a Saturday, and then the Sunday is spent volunteering in the community. So whether that's a neighborhood cleanup or preparing meals for those in need or collecting clothing for those in need, it's just that focus on like you should be a piece of your community beyond just running through. Um, you should be an active giver in your community and give back to it as well.
is that the race with the black, green, and red?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, there's more to that, right? Like, was this started by? Was this is like an? It's connected to African Americans very specifically.
Yeah, so was put together by the call it the Unity Collective. So it was always built with the mission of really being a part of the community, and it's highlighting um, Black-owned businesses, neighborhoods, charities. It's the goal is it's a race for the culture by the culture. So I'll admit I am a member of the team that puts the race together, but we just want to be a positive force within our community. So it's the goal is for it to be collaborative and to show that um, we really want to make sure that we are supporting our people and our communities in positive ways and really given some extra spotlight to historically Black neighborhoods in Atlanta, which don't always get run in as often, but there's a lot of positivity there, and they deserve to get some love as well.
How long is the race?
There's a 5K and there's also a half marathon.
Okay. Um, so it sounds like a different route than most of the races that you do.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, I have to admit, like, I'm dying to go to Atlanta.
You should come. We're gonna have the event first weekend in October. We would
No,
love to have you.
I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm definitely gonna register and I'm gonna come.
Wonderful.
Um, you know, I have to say this about Atlanta. I feel like there's a very strong African American community there,
Yes.
and I feel, you know, African Americans everywhere, right? So, but I feel like there's a it's on a different level there. And this is not come like, oh yeah, I was there the other day. I just get that feeling, whether it's the music or everything I hear about the culture, it's just like Atlanta, Atlanta, Atlanta. I'm like, why am I not there right now? Like, if I had to move, I would probably want to move to Atlanta just because I want to be where my people are at.
Yeah, we have some really great running organizations here in Atlanta, and a lot of support. And I will say the race weekend, it's an event. It does feel like a family reunion. We do kick things off with just some social gatherings, and then it's just all fun through there from there. But like I said, we also cap it off by making sure we do that community service and that we are continuing to get back to. So it's just very fulfilling, um, all around. Um, Regarding the culture, though, I will say that I feel like I've definitely benefited and grown as a runner by just seeing the amazing accomplishments of my peers. And it's not just, being a fast runner versus being a slower runner, just their motivation and seeing them achieve their goals from, wanting to get together large groups of Black people to run a marathon together and keep them motivated and supported as they train, all the way to celebrating towards the finish line, to making sure that we have great events to run by doing things like the race. Like there's just seems to be so much, there's like a lot of love within the community, and you can find somebody who, to help push you along the way, whether it's a couple miles all the way to 26.2 and beyond, to also getting ready for that first triathlon. We have lots of those athletes as well.
We've had a common theme so far. What is it about running that helps people find themselves?
I feel like it just gives you a lot of time to get into your own head. Whenever you're running miles, it's hard not to just spend some time reflecting and um, just seeing how far you can stretch yourself, whether it is that mile pace or going that extra distance. Um, it's just a perfect opportunity to kind of reflect, and you're taking it all in as with each mile, whether it's taking in like visually the city, or even if you're in a group and getting to know a new running buddy. There's i mean there's there's a lot, it's a lot of time spent with yourself,
Right.
in a way that other sports might not be.
You know what? I try to drag my brother out on runs,
Hmm.
and I was saying to him that I started enjoying not having the headphones because I find that the headphones distract me, and I'm
Hmm.
and I'm less present with the run. And like you said, you're in your head, but not just in your head, like away from running, but you're connecting to your body, you each
Yes.
step, and like as I'm running, I'm feeling my alignment, my hips, my so when I'm jamming out and I'm just like I'm not really I'm less focused on it, and I'm also having that internal dialogue, the headphones on. I'm also having that internal dialogue, but the music's going. So I'm kind of in and out of the music. And sometimes the music will give me a thought. And it's like too many voices.
Yeah, you got to do more runs without music. I actually don't run with music, and people sometimes think that's a little bit crazy. I mean, that's a sometimes it's a long time, sometimes it's a large distance. But I mean, even in a marathon, if you don't have any music, I've got thousands of people around me. There's no reason to get bored. So
No,
I recommend running without music if you can.
yeah, music on race day, it unless it's like a really, really quiet race where there's no spectators and you're doing a lot of running by yourself, for the most part, you don't really need it on race day unless you're really, you know, to each his own. But I've really found that as I get more in sync with running and what I'm doing, I don't want the music because and then it's like the headphones and the volume and the skipping to the next song. And I'm like, one thing at a time, like, yeah. what I started doing in the pandemic, or not even in the pandemic, it's been 2 months now. I just run 3 miles a day.
Hmm.
And that way I don't have to, because sometimes in running, you start thinking about, all right, where should I run? How long should I run? I did a long run this day, so I'll do a short run today. And I find like all of that starts to get, so it's simple. I do the same route, 3 miles, no negotiating. Oh, well, I'm a little tired. And I did a lot, I just do 3 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a nice, it kind of sets up the meditation a little bit differently.
Yeah. I guess my pandemic running challenge was, so Atlanta actually has a lot of really good street art. We have some amazing artists. And there's even an Instagram page where it's called Living Walls ATL, I believe. And they just have amazing art that people put up all over the city. So, my friend and I, so my sister and then Winnie, our mutual friend, just spent a lot of time like looking up where these different art pieces are, and even something called tiny doors. And we worked a lot of our routes over the last year into being able to visit um, those locations. So in the last year, I've seen hundreds of murals. I think we topped out one day. We managed to do a run with like 80 of them because we had
Wow.
to do that tenth marathon became a virtual. So might as well have something to keep you moving and going and something to see. So the pace definitely slowed because there were a lot more selfies and picture taking, but at least it gave, it just shifted the goal as opposed to trying to just push towards like a new PR, which was what my original plan was for 2020. The focus for me just kind of became keep it fun, keep exploring, and just try to find something to appreciate around a year that was not going in any way as expected.
Now, I mean, you mentioned the pandemic. I, in most of my conversations with people, I find that other than the deaths, people getting sick, and the general isolation and not doing the activities you're used to, people were very much enjoying the shift in pace.
Hmm.
Has that been for you?
Um, there are pros and cons. I appreciate that I got some extra time with virtually with people across country who were spending a little bit more time on Zoom, and so just being intentional with some friends that I wasn't talking to as much on the phone, and doing virtual game nights and things like that. Um, I think at first I took for granted how hard the shift would be because I've personally been working um, from home since 2010. So it's like no big deal. It's just now just everyone is doing it. But it's harder to adjust when you can't go to the places you would have otherwise. So felt like I was losing some sense of choice, and um, that was much harder than I anticipated. And I miss not getting to travel because I usually travel to at least, 5 or 6 races a year.
Right.
Um, and so it just had to keep shifting my mindset to make it work.
So you mentioned the race in October. Are How's the Atlanta calendar looking otherwise?
Oh gosh, it's gonna be such a full fall for everybody. Um, Luckily, the track club was able to have a signature half marathon and marathon. I think the 28th of February. It was that last weekend. I will say I still did mine virtually. I wasn't quite ready to fully return, but they've been able to have some events just in a little bit. They just had to adjust the model a little bit in some remote places. Um, my first big in person race is scheduled to be the AJC Peachtree Road Race, which is an annual Atlanta tradition. It's world's largest 10K. I don't know if they're technically on the 51st or 52nd since last year went virtual, but they were able to hold it for 50 years live. And it's looking like it'll be live again
That's a
this
big
year.
one.
So I'm excited for it. I've run it the last what since 2010 with my sister who dragged me into running. So she's scheduled to come to Atlanta and run it with me again this year. So I'm excited to get back out there. And it's a party down Peachtree. So another one of those, like if you're coming to Atlanta, you got to at some point do the Peachtree.
When is that?
It is typically the 4th of July. Um, this year, just due to the needs of the current situation, the fact that they just can't have it as big as it has in the past. We're actually doing it over the entire weekend. So it'll take place July 3rd and July 4th.
So it'll be like the same race on two separate days.
Yep.
Nice. So are you planning to wear a mask for that?
Um, I they've we have not been told all the safety protocols, but I do know that they are that with your registration comes a mask. So
Yeah.
it is somehow involved in the weekend.
So are you planning to wear your mask?
Um, I admit I've not done any in person races. Basically kept things pretty low key. And I will, and even when I'm out, if I come past a person, I will like pull. I usually run with a buff around my neck,
Yeah.
and then I keep a mask in my pocket, and I will put it on if for any reason I feel like
Yeah, yeah,
I'm getting too close to people.
yeah.
Yeah,
So you're probably gonna wear it during the race.
probably.
Yeah. Um, did you know people who got sick,
Yes.
like ill or just positive?
I all of it, and even passed away. Yeah.
Oh wow. Sorry to hear it. That is a tough one. Yeah, this pandemic has been COVID, Corona. I mean, are you into the news? Like, did you see it coming, or were you watching it? Or
I have a friend is in who is in who teaches in China. So I did know that they were starting to lock down before the end of the year in 2019. So that's what kind of clued me in that this was a real thing. So I've been on the cautious side.
yeah, yeah. I know some people who said they felt like they had it in 2019. Like before people were wearing masks and stuff. They like I had this strange illness and I was told this, I was told that, and I felt like I had it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I fall into that category, but I mean, it it spread really fast. It has been extremely devastating. I think it'll be something that we will continue to look back on and continue to study for the rest of our lives because I don't think I don't think anybody was prepared for how much was lost as quickly as it was.
I get the sense you were heavily affected by COVID.
Yes.
I'm sorry to hear it. My aunt, she works in one of the hospitals in New York, Queens. And my cousin, she's also a doctor, and they kept going to work. And I have another friend who works in the hospital, and She wears like a mask and another mask on top and the face shield, and she covers her hair, and it hasn't been easy.
No, but I mean, I definitely appreciate those who just went above and beyond and making sure, doing their best to keep others safe and kept going to work, kept trying to take care of others, even though it unfortunately put themselves and their families at risk. And I mean, I'm forever grateful for all of those professions that are on the front lines and the sacrifices that they made. I don't think there's enough ways to show that appreciation and support for what was given there.
I think a lot of us are going to be wearing masks for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
years to come. So it's still like it's, you know, how do you feel about the vaccine? Are you thinking about it? Is it available in Atlanta? Like, how is it going over there?
Yeah, it's been available to people over 16 for a couple of weeks now in Atlanta. I think towards the beginning of um, sometime in March. So for a couple weeks, I am vaccinated. I do. Um, it was important to me to do everything I could to keep myself and my family safe. So I did make the choice to get vaccinated.
So is there long lines? Is it like a really in and out kind of thing? Is it quick? Is it everywhere?
I didn't have any problems. They've done a good job of putting together some mass vaccination sites and spreading the word. I think it was a little chaotic for everyone towards the beginning of the process, but everyone that I personally know who has wanted to get vaccinated has been able to get one. And of course, if anytime that I've heard that someone is having trouble, I've done my best to help them get one too. So for some, I think you might not have gotten your first choice of location, but people are generally finding them if they want it.
I saw that you went to Berlin.
Hmm.
How was Berlin?
Berlin was a lot of fun. That was my first and thus far only international marathon, but it was a great time. I wish I could have stayed there longer.
How long did you do?
Um, how long was I there? I think I was there a little over a week. That was a sister trip, so we started off down in Austria, and then so went to, I believe it was Salzburg, then up to Munich to catch a little bit of Oktoberfest. Spent some time in Prague, and then ended the trip with the race in Berlin.
Yeah, I always find it's a little interesting because when you have vacation before the race, like you're vacationing and there's this 26 mile, this thing in the back
Mm-hmm.
of your mind, like, yeah, I want to do this, but you kind of have to, factor that in there. So it's always, and if you try to do vacation after, then it's like, well, I'm gonna be a little bit slow. So yeah, vacation marathons are a little bit tricky, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will say I did miss out on some sightseeing that my sisters got to go on without me because I did need a little bit recovery after race morning. So I did miss out on some photo ops.
Yeah. So your sister got you into running?
Um, my sisters went as the cheering squad. So I have two sisters. Neither of them did that marathon, but they were both there for support.
But they got you into running? You said your sister
Oh,
got.
my older sister, yes, she is the one that got me into running. Yeah.
So it sounds like you came in to New York to Atlanta and she was there and said, "Hey, let's do some runs."
No, actually, so My sister moved to Greenville, South Carolina, which is only a couple hours from Atlanta, and I was here. And as a way to meet people, she joined a run group through her local running store. And they were doing like the pub run thing, and they were signing up for 5Ks together. And anytime she signed up for a 5K, she would sign me up too, because I mean it wasn't that long of a drive. um and a couple 5Ks is okay. And I was even okay with the 10K that came. But then she was like, and now we're signing up for half marathon. I was like, I can't do a half marathon without doing some type of training. And like I now need my own people. I need my own runners to connect with to help get through that far. So she was definitely the catalyst, because if I might not still be running if she had kept it at 5Ks. But once she said half marathon, it's like, I need a real plan, or that's going to hurt. So, and then I just kept with it since.
I started running, like weight management.
Mm-hmm.
I'd run around my neighborhood or go to the gym, run a little bit, or running as a part of like weightlifting and combining it with things. And I lived in New York, um, and I would do my run and around Central Park. And I sometimes I'd do the loop of Central Park, and oh, that was nice. And I went through different periods. Like there was a period when I was running every day, one loop in Central Park. And I remember one day I said, what if I do two loops? And like, this was just me. I wasn't thinking about a race or training, or I was just like, you start that runner's high kind of thing, you feel good when you're done. So obviously the second loop hurt, but I just kept fiddling with running, And one day I came back from a run and I was pumped up and I was like, I want to do a marathon. Like, I don't know where that voice came from. I didn't know anyone who ran. It was just out of thin air. It just came to me. I'm going to run a marathon. And it's funny because I spent like 2 years entering the New York City lottery
Mm-hmm.
and I did not get in the lottery. And for those 2 years, I didn't run any races. So I just applied for the lot, and and to this day, I always look back and I was like, if I had known, I would have registered for a race somewhere else, because like that energy that I had 3 years later, 4 years later, when I finally ran a marathon, it wasn't the same. But I did fall in love with the running and community in New York City and those things. I think for me, I found that I was a young parent on the Upper West Side. So, it, in a lot of ways, I wasn't surrounded by a lot of peers, right? And running was a way for me to connect with people. And that's how I started. I fell in love and I ended up doing, 9+1.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is. After missing the lottery 2 years in a row, by the third time to miss the lottery, I said, let me try that 9+1 thing. And by that point, I was no longer in that excited shape where I was like, oh, I could do. Now I'm like, can I even do a race? So I'm showing up there like I'm here to run, and I didn't know. It was, and I found that New York City was very much like like non people of color who were very fast. So 80 or 90% of the people, or at least in my perception, it was like, so I didn't feel like I found community right away. So I was there in 2012. I ran 9 races in 2012, and I was physically amongst 10,000 people, but I didn't feel like, oh, I fell into this amazing community that I love. It wasn't like that. So I'm surrounded by all these people, and I know there were run groups. So I started looking for run groups, and I didn't easily find like this is a run group for everyone, or the groups of color that exist, they weren't like easy to find or easy to just jump in, or at least back in 2012. And I went online and I started looking around, and I found a group, the Dashing Whippets. That was the first group I ever technically ran with. And there wasn't many black people in the group, and everyone was like fast. And they were welcoming, so it wasn't like a problem, but it just didn't really click. And I showed up when I could, awkwardly, like, and I finished out 2012 that way. Um, but I found that in 2013, I was what began to happen was this was the early days of Instagram. So everyone, early days of Instagram, you just posted whatever, and little by little, the hashtags, the location tags, and by the end of 2012, going into 2013, we started seeing each other. These little pockets of people on Instagram. If I look at Instagram back end of 2012, 2013 compared to now, it was like a completely different Instagram. There was like 1,000 people. Let me give it. There's like 100 people, and so if you spent time on Instagram back then, you knew who those 100 people were. So, but at the end of the race, you stop, you're drinking your water, and you're like, oh, I recognize that person. I recognize that person. And that's how it was back then. Now, comparison, I feel like Instagram has 100,000 people. So when you scroll, you see like a new person every time you click on it. And it's hard to say, like, oh, I reckon. So we started like liking each other's stuff, and like commenting on each other's stuff, and before you know it, we had a little group of Insta runners, and little by little we started hanging out, and it became a thing. And that was my first real home as a runner. And little by little we made it official, and we started doing hangouts and meetups and Facebook group. And I think a large part of what the running community has been for me wouldn't have been social media helped a lot. And it's, I don't know, it's just not the same now. They're still there, there's still people, it's still the hashtag, but it's less of that, like, oh yeah, I saw you, like, now it's more like, you know what I mean, when you go to a big school versus a small school, it had like a small school vibe to it back then. And same amount of people at the race, but now everyone has their phone, and it's just different. How does that connect to what you've seen from 2012 up through now?
Well, I feel really fortunate. There's so many groups here, and overall, I found them pretty welcoming. Um, the group that I initially joined back in 2010 is a group I still run with, um, and I will say I went back for the first time this past weekend after not really running for a year, or not seriously running for a year, just kind of running when I felt like it versus, running with a goal and a purpose. And it was kind of like cheers, that people were excited to see me. They welcomed me back. And it felt like there wasn't judgment there. Um, there are a lot of running meetup opportunities in Atlanta. So, that's my long run group, but I have plenty of options for midweek runs too. So tomorrow I'm gonna, do a safe, socially distanced running meetup with with friends from the running nerds. So I I feel like if it's the thing that you want to be a part of, um, there, it's hard to feel alone, because whether it's just in, meeting someone and feeling welcomed by them because you happen to run by them and they're in a BGR or a BMR shirt, or you're checking, looking through Facebook and you see one of the South Fulton running partners. Like, there are just so many opportunities. There's so many meetups at prominent parts of the city that it's hard to miss. It's hard not to find a runner. Not hard, it's hard not to just be driving down the street and see someone you want to cheer along, or see somebody in an Atlanta Track Club shirt or something of that nature. So we do also have the benefit, it's you can run in Atlanta almost year round, because the weather is on the milder side. So I'm sure that helps us out a lot, too. So
So how has the social media affected, like impacted the socialization?
um I would say that I would say it's probably helped, because it does allow for different groups to mix and find each other. And then you just find the run that's either, on your side of town, or that you feel the most connected to. And got some people who just kind of fit in with all of them. So yeah, I don't think it's, at least for me, it hasn't hurt much.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically making Atlanta sound the way I think it is. Like a million people who just like, yeah, And I think, I'm sure New York is the same, but I just think at the time running wasn't like, there wasn't as many people of color, like just with, there wasn't like 40 groups of people of color back in 2012.
Hmm.
And I knew BGR people back in 2012. And it was almost like I wanted to join BGR, like it was just like, um, I know black men run. I'm sure they existed in 2012, but I didn't see them at like anywhere in person or online. I probably didn't see them until like maybe 2014. So it was, there's like a slow transition to like, you know, but again, I'm just one person. I don't, I just so from there I really fell in love with the community and the meetups and the hangout, and that was my outlet. I met parents and young people, old people, and it was really a nice space to like, you know just get away and socialize.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's been good. um with all of the things happening now, um like with Black Lives Matter and stuff like that, has there been a lot of those kinds of runs in Atlanta?
Yes, we've had some solidarity runs, whether for Black Lives Matter, or, in support of, um, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And I'm sure we had a horrible shooting last month.
Right.
Um, so I mean, I think Atlanta's progressive in that way. It is there's a lot of culture here, and I think it's a passionate city. I mean, it's a place that has been at the forefront of the civil rights movement throughout history, and I think it believes in that, its role still in that space.
Can you walk me through a little bit, like paint a picture, um, like after that shooting, and like what you saw, what was your experience?
Um, I mean, I don't want to speak outside um, of my expertise.
Yeah.
Um,
All right.
but yeah,
Let me
I that's it's, but it, I mean, it's.
yeah. Let me
I know
say
that it was described in a number of different ways in the media, but it felt like a hate crime. It did feel very targeted. It was not acceptable in any way.
yeah. So a hate crime against the Asian, and basically I didn't want you to like describe what happened, but more like say what like everyone rallied together and we went decided to do a run, or just what you saw, not saying tell me what happened.
Um, yeah, one of the run organizations here did have a solidarity run, and um, there were some donations to an organization, and I'm forgetting which one, in honor of the individuals who
Do you
lost
think
their lives.
solidarity runs are important?
I think that one of the things about running is like I said earlier, it connects you to your community, and you share a piece of humanity, and you are sharing some very vulnerable moments. There are lots of TMI moments among runners, and just like you would share that excitement of the race, or that hitting that big milestone, there's other emotional experiences that can and should be shared. And unfortunately, in these instances, it's loss and it's pain, and trying to make sense of really unfortunate sadness and hatred. But by seeing that people can come together and there is still love and support there, that does help with the healing. It does remind you that you aren't alone. And again, it's the community taking care of each other, and moving past being, you know, superficial, or, and, you've got it. You take care of those whom you care about, and you that's important, I think. So, you know, dealing with your emotions by just showing that you're there and creating safe spaces for people is important.
um you know when the whole thing with George Floyd happened, it very much was, I don't want to say like I've gotten used to it, but there's a numbing around like these reports, and like it's happened too frequently. When I first heard it, I didn't immediately like feel the something really really heavy, right? Before I even heard about it, I started hearing the reaction, and obviously now the news is so fast. You hear about it and the reaction in like 2 to 3 hours. So I started like hearing people saying this is not right, that and I already started like, okay, what is it this time? That was like my initial thing, and then hearing more of the story, people were really upset. And as the as I got more and more reactions, it started impacting me, more. I started feeling it more and more, and then seeing the video just was like, okay, this is like another level. I think with George Floyd we kind of went to a new level that we haven't been at in the last 20 years. And I think, it being a pandemic, it was really this kind of climatic moment between being in isolation and all of those emotions and everything else, and then this kind of new level it's I don't know. It was very like a turning point in for a lot of things, and I don't think we're done with that. And I know the trial is happening now, but the thing that really freaks me out is like we've had like more deaths since then. So it's like, all right, we hit this huge point, turning point. You know, officers are being whatever are being indicted and going on trial, and hoping that goes the way it's supposed to, and these other things are happening. It's almost like I don't know it being in a pandemic. I feel like we're putting all of that stuff in a bottle, and still in pandemic, we just fully haven't been able to let it out. And I felt like the Asian hate crime just like lump that in there too. I think for me it's more than just a black thing. I think it's more of a thing about hate in America, and like really thinking seriously about moving forward and actually being serious about like, are we going to address this or not? And the scary thing is, our political climate is we're slow to address things, and it leads to a 6 month conversation where nothing happens, and then there's another thing that restirs it, and we kind of move on, and it's like, you know I don't even know what I feel right now. It's just like, but I think it happening to another group, like the Asian in that specific scenario, helped me be more upset about the larger issue, because it's not a black thing. When you see it as a black thing, then you're like, all right, a black person's upset about a black thing. So you can kind of like, oh, okay, they're upset about that black thing. But when you're like, all right, America has this attitude towards everyone, and the way we value each other and relationships and community, are we going to talk about it? Like, are we going to address it? It's not just a police thing. It's not just a black thing. It's it's something in our history that we really have to shine a light on and teach it in schools, and get every church person out, get the atheists out. Like, everyone has to get involved. You have to say something. You have to pick a side. Like, you have to react. And like Martin Luther King said, if you stay silent, that's an action. That's a you're making a choice to side with the oppressors. And I think, are we going to wait for another Sandy Hook, or like, this something heavy here? And like, not to get too heavy on you, you don't have to say anything, but we're running for these things, and this is what we're running about, and we're feeling it, and it's like, and I can hug you, I can light candles, we can do a run, we can say, justice for so and so, we can indict an officer, we can convict an officer, but it's just been like, every year or every so often,
I mean,
something.
it's tough. We've got some systemic issues that need to be addressed. I mean, even you asking about, do we need another Sandy Hook? We've had several. And there was another school shooting today.
Mm.
So it's how many times does the same thing need to happen for action to be spurred? And in in some ways it just it does you're right, it doesn't feel like it's happening fast enough. It doesn't feel like enough is being done. So it I wish I had the answer. um History is complicated, I think, because just talked about people needing to share, spend more time looking back and understanding it, but most of us don't learn these things in grade school because people like stories with happy endings, and it's easier to, tell the story of like Honest Abe as opposed to all the complicated things that happen and leading to the Civil War and true beliefs of, Lincoln regarding um, the slaves and, whether they should even remain in America and the difficulty of Reconstruction. A lot of that just kind of gets glossed over. So there's a lot that you can learn, but you gotta seek to find it, and you gotta do active, intentional work in order to really make those changes.
So, I mean, I know we set out talking about running and these things, and I don't want to like thrust any of it on you, but I'm me personally, I'm constantly thinking about like what is the right way forward and where do we actually want to go, and like we really need a clear sense of action in terms of like what do we care about, what's non-negotiable, what are we like where like if you're going someplace you have to have a map, and you have to say all right, this is where we're going, so we have to teach the kids, this is where we're going, so we have to build schools this way, these kinds of things. But I get the sense like with the sweep it under the rug, it's more like let's continue to sweep it under the rug. We're actually not really trying to change. And I feel like it's like a old money new money kind of thing. Like old money is sweeping it under the rug, and the new young people are saying, hey, let's try to make it better. And they're like, all right, if you want to go ahead, do your little whatever. And there's not the big boat is not really turning, it's just kind of sitting there. And I'm just, I think, I think at some point, America is definitely going to be, if you ask me, Alexi, 200 years from now, is this going to be better? I would say yes, but I feel like every generation is kind of like putting it off or kind of waiting. Like someone like Martin Luther King to be the face of a movement, like people need something like that. And it doesn't matter how bad things is, unless there's like a Martin Luther King who's willing to push it forward. It's not it doesn't seem to me that like a little school pastor, a little principal here, a little community program here, it's not really going to take that thing and really push it forward unless we have some really serious movement. I'm not saying we need one person, but a really serious movement. And I, I'm all about that. And I'm all about putting my finger on it and saying, this has to stop, this has to stop. Like, you can't have a president who's saying random things that incite violence. Like, so many people were disgusted by that, but they didn't do anything, right? They just, like, what are you gonna do? So, I think the middle class really have to take things seriously. And I don't think what Trump did can be undone by Biden. Biden is just a president who's putting one block in front of, like what Trump did was a big deal. And, some people are still saying he's not racist. Some people are still saying, oh, he didn't, like, and we're all over the place. And like to have Trump make America great again, and then all of these mass shootings, and to kind of just brush Trump under the rug, and all of these things that we have, it's like, all right, it's clearly contributing to the last 200 years and all these violence things. Like there's a clear connection there. So to not acknowledge that, to not have every senator wearing a big "the violence has to stop" on their shirt and really saying, all right, gun companies, you can make and sell as many guns as you want, but If no one's saying that with any real passion, to me, it's just like waiting for another one and another one and another one. What was it that happened today?
Oh, there was a shooting at a school in Knoxville,
Knoxville, Tennessee. Was it
Knoxville,
kids?
Tennessee. Yeah.
Was it kids?
Yes, I believe so.
Like kids or like high
I
school
don't know
or
what I
young?
don't know what
Yeah.
grade it was. I just know it was a school shooting.
I mean, to me, it's a different, like Columbine was terrible, but it's one thing when a kid from the school brings a gun, and it's another thing when a complete stranger like goes to a school. To me, that's another level, you know.
But none of it is acceptable.
No, it's not, but I'm saying it's
And
another level.
it's sad that we're now talking about levels. I mean, a school is a place where you should feel safe.
Right.
You shouldn't have to be worried about doing shooting drills. You shouldn't be worried that somebody's going to come in the door and attack you. I mean, you're supposed to this is your chance to learn. This is an extension practically of your home. You should be able to trust the people that are around you. Everyone deserves to be able to learn in peace.
Yeah. I surreal. I really think going forward, so I'm not a person who yaps on about the problems because I feel like everyone's good at that. You have all these experts who are telling you, oh, I studied the problem for the last 60 years, and they'll draw a graph and they'll tell you historical. I don't care. I don't care about the analyzing the problem. I think we really need, like I said, like tomorrow, senators need to have like that giant button on their shirt. Like we're all in agreement on this. This whole left against right thing, it's nonsense. Anyway, um, so I think the solution is we really have to think, each of us, not someone else. We each have to think about our neighbors, the community we live in. And I think you're a community activist, and I feel like you're out there and you have your hand on it. So I, but so many people are disconnected from their neighbors. So many people live on a street with 10 people and they don't know who those 10 people are. And they've been there for 10 years. Like it's too normal to this level of isolation. And for a large part, this is what the podcast is about. How do we begin to break that down? You need to find commonality. It doesn't matter if you're a different race and you're older and you're a different gender or this and that. Like, no, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk because we're all humans. We've gotten so complicated. Like, no, we're going to put on this movie and we're going to sit down, we're going to talk, we're going to eat this food. You can cook whatever you want. I don't care if it's spicy or bland, and just talk. You know, it's gotten so weird now. Sorry.
But no, don't accept bland food. You should always make sure you have some hot sauce or something. Spice it up.
But it's just weird. It's gotten awkward, like that silent elevator awkward. We're on the same line at the grocery store awkward. Like, just it's gotten too normal now, and I think all of that contributes to mass shootings. All of that contributes to police brutality, and I think we need to make that connection. Like, if you're online at the grocery store, and now the thing is the pandemic, so that's kind of like made things like, all right, well, because of the pandemic, I'm not going to do that, or it's not safe. That's the thing that I hate the most about the pandemic, is that it's given people a right, another reason to not be in contact with people that they encounter in person. And that's my biggest fear coming out of the pandemic. Like I said, people are going to be wearing masks for years. So, um, you know, it now that's one more layer to keep you away from connecting with someone. But I do think that is what we need to do. You know, I had kids in daycare, and when you put your kids in daycare, it's not like everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're new to daycare? Welcome. I'm going to host you at my house next week, Saturday. That's not what happens. You go into daycare and it's like, you know, the adults are worse than the kids. It's kind of like this thing, and it's just everywhere. And people feel so much tension at work. You know, like we have a society with so much social tension around each other that creates the environment for politicians to do the things they do, for all of these things. We're all responsible for it. So my idea with the podcast was, let's have real conversation. Let's, you know, the goal is not to stay in podcast forever. It's to get in person. I'm gonna book that flight. I'm coming to Atlanta. Like what do we have to do? We need to like figure this out. You cannot wait for another generation to give it to, oh, my kids will, because we're teaching kids indifference. And that's my biggest message. Like, I live in the middle of a suburb with a lot of people who are so focused on their kids, and they're very much isolating their kids from other kids, you know. And me being a person of color, I'm like, do you know how traumatic that is for me, for my kids, and for you to teach that to your kids? And these are good people who really want to do something, but they don't know what to do. I'm like, just start inviting people over, you know. And it's so awkward to do something that simple, and it's just normal. Like, I don't know what to do, and you're just like, so that's my little, speech to the world. You know, start connecting, start talking to neighbors, you know, knock on their doors, invite them over. Yes, it's awkward, and I'm always that awkward person who's like, and you know, people who know me, they either like that or they don't, you know. And most of the time it doesn't work. People are like freaked out. They're like, all right, he's trying to sell me something, he's weird, he's, you know, they're cringing, they're trying to end the interaction as soon as possible, you know.
Yeah, it's moving out of that individualism. Like I said, it's that, that runner TMI, that awkwardness that you are used to being in uncomfortable situations and making the best of them. It's a, it's a skill set that made you perfect to be a runner.
Exactly, exactly. But I wish I could say that all runners get it and it's like a different world, and when I'm with runners I just feel like they all get it. And you know, I think it's like, it's good to a point, and it's better than it is in a normal situation. But yeah, yeah, I started a running group in 2015,
Hmm.
and that I brought that gung-ho energy, and it was very cohesive, and a lot of, and it was great, you know. I feel like I'm fired up and I could keep going, so I'm trying to balance this out. And yeah, there's no pressure, you know. I also feel like people are very much like walking on eggshells. You know, if I say the wrong thing 10 years from now, someone can take that quote and destroy my whole career. So
The internet is forever. There are different pressures
yeah,
as
and I
you're.
respect that, you know. But I know certain things, like, if we, that's the same thing that makes a coworker not want to reach out to another coworker. That's the same thing that makes someone, it's the same thing. And now we're using the internet as the new weapon to just like, you know, we have the ultimate connecting tool, and now we're weaponizing the internet to isolate. And it's like, do we not see this? So for me, I just really kind of, I just think like, okay, and I really try to find people who I can like get on a like-minded level. Everyone has a different level of which you get that like-mindedness with, and just meet people on their level and just try to work with them. And I think my biggest thing is my passion gets the best of it, and they're like, oh. So that's my own journey. One of the big things that I try to get people to talk about, that I talk about, that I think is very important, is that journey of self-discovery. That's what life is about, right? We're discovering ourselves and getting to know ourselves, and self-actualization. And that's what you're doing when you're running. And as time passes, you experience yourself in different situations, and whether it's goals or obstacles or human interactions or work or just being alone in pandemic isolation, all of these things take you somewhere and it shows you something. And in the end, as you look at all of these things, you need to put those pieces of puzzle together and see the big picture. How do you do that? We all have to do it in our own way.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts from you?
We talked about a lot today. I wouldn't know where to start. I would just say there is a value in community, both in those that help you feel supported and seen, and those moments and people who challenge you in good ways and in bad, and hopefully that is a catalyst or a spark to improvement. I know that you mentioned you're looking for who's going to be that one leader. um I think I do I think that it's a group effort. Like, it wasn't it King wasn't by himself. um he found his tribe. He found the group of people that um encouraged him, that he debated with, and that he could rely on to really push the movement forward. And I haven't given up hope. I have some optimism. I mean, we saw a lot during this last election cycle, and people are increasing their awareness. But like you said, it's now on them to what are they going to do with it? Are we going to continue to see a change in voting? Are we going to continue to see people challenge companies to make their dollars follow their supposed values? And I think what's going to be what pushes things forward, at least at this moment, and we'll see where it grows from there.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I really appreciate you. One of the things that I like to end with is next steps and actions. So, I one of the things I also like to do is invite people back. And right now, and this first wave that I'm going through, I'm kind of trying to bolster the individuals, the one-on-ones,
Mm-hmm.
and going forward, I'll do more group kind of things. And I don't, I'm thinking like this is a movement, to get someplace where we're already on the journey, but it's to get us over that next hurdle, and using the internet as a platform for good, to 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 really like kind of to lower your defenses a little bit and connect with others and really say, you know, this is what I want. I want to go in that direction and those kinds of things. I like to keep it light, and I want it to be fun, you know, like lighthearted fun, like not just heavy. All right, let's talk about what's wrong and these kinds of things, because we're more than just the political stuff that's happening out there. We are, you know, a lot of the conversation, we have a limited amount of time to talk when we talk. So, there's the what do you like to eat? And like slutty vegan is like on my, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I'm light. Like I'm not like, oh, but there's so many real things that I think we need to have a little bit of, like let's not be all light. um I'm gonna share my flight itinerary with you.
Okay.
um that's my best bet, right? The race.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, like um actionable steps. Again, it's not just conversation. I'm not doing this for the likes. I'm not trying to get views or make ad revenue. It's really like something actionable. So when we look back on this 5 years from now, we're like, yo, we started something. That was the beginning of X, Y, and Z. And look at where we are now. And something. Um, so many people, I don't want to say it the wrong way, just don't have that mindset. It's just kind of like, oh, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, if not us, if we have that mindset, then it's like, you know what I mean? It's like you're already dead. So yeah, I am a little fired up, and I do feel like baby steps. Let's plan a trip to Slutty Vegan. No expectation.
Just be prepared for the line. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk on the line. And just, you know what I mean? Like, so let's see what happens. And let's honestly try to meet people where they are, and not keep our walls up and not invite people into our space. And it is going to be uncomfortable, right? It's not going to be like, oh, I met my best friend today. And it most of the time it doesn't start and feel like that. It's a bit of uncomfortable, right?
Right.
So you kind of have to start there and do that hard work, which is not easy, I think. And I think people are afraid of that initially, so they kind of just, oh, but I don't know them, or oh, I'm not. So I really applaud you for jumping over that initial hurdle, coming on. It says a lot about how amazing you are, and I appreciate you listening to me and you sharing a bit of your journey, and just being available for that.
Yeah, thank you for the invite. It was fun getting to chat with you today. So let's see where the journey continues to take both of us.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, okay?
You too.